Welcome to...
Green Day are a part of just about every rock fan's history. Billie Joe, Mike, and Tré have essentially kept going since the late 80s when founded and early 90s when they started to get attention. The band's discography has been all over the map in quality, energy, message, but one thing is for sure, Green Day keep coming back. As of recording this, the album Saviors is coming out in less than 2 months, and we've already heard 2 singles from the upcoming 14th studio release. That's an impressive feat, and every time a new Green Day album releases, it makes me remember just how big of a deal Green Day has been. We live in a world where we listeners constantly compare new music to past releases, and this video will hopefully prove it can be done in a beneficial and supportive way. This video will break down why I think both Dookie and American Idiot are great, and which album I prefer. I'll give a brief description on each album if you aren't familiar, but if you clicked on this video, you're probably already familiar somewhat with Green Day and their 2 biggest albums, and I feel that's safe to assume. And if you aren't, thanks for clicking on the video anyway and coming to the channel.
Do you have the time to listen to me?
Released February 1st, 1994, Dookie made Green Day famous. Not just famous within punk or the alternative scene, but legit made songs like Basket Case and Welcome to Paradise 90s staples. Both Green Day and Dookie were household names after 94. I mean, the term Dookie was already known, but you get what I mean. This was an evolution from punk to alternative. Where punk mostly had a serious and angry tone, Dookie was much more lighthearted and didn't relish in angst. It was the perfect compromise for jaded grunge fans and younger alt-rock fans wanting something different while feeling they could still connect. The radio airplay and music video rotation on cable was massive. Green Day had a rocket strapped to them due to their Dookie, which is certified diamond for over 10 million copies sold in the US, along with platinum and gold certifications around the world. Along with the song sounding great live and many tracks becoming permanent parts of 90s movies and TV, I don't think Green Day would have exploded the way they did if Dookie wasn't so well executed. It led to Green Day at Woodstock 94, Green Day on Late Night, the album cover of Green Day being permanent poster art everywhere. This was another beginning step for pop punk while never sounding whiny or aimed at youth. Dookie was an album that everyone took to. Along with all that, Dookie had variety in speed and tone. They had radio hits, it had deep cuts, it had a secret song that's something the youth of today will never experience due to not growing up with CDs. Dookie was an essential part of the 90s, even if you weren't a rock fan. Another way to look at it, think about how much grunge dominated music in the early 90s, and then along comes a California pop-punk band with smiles on their faces able to stand out because the music is so good. Released September 21st, 2004, American Idiot was the reinvigoration Green Day needed a decade after Dookie. It was a big change as well, where Green Day fully embraced their emo side while getting direct in their political stance. No longer was Green Day a fun-loving pop-punk, punk rock style, but American Idiot would mark the rock opera that makes a statement. President Bush and the Iraq War had their designated protest album. American Idiot, for the most part, was a true rock opera and anti-war record that shifted the sound, attitude, and even appearance of Green Day. The band grew up, got more focused, and mostly directed their attention toward how they felt with the state of the world in 2004. The sales and success were huge for American Idiot as well, going 6 times platinum in the United States and platinum and gold several times over all around the world. Singles like the title track, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Holiday, and the Reflecting on a Father Passing, Wake Me Up When September Ends all were certified successes also, and it landed Green Day at #1 on Billboard 200. I remember seeing Green Day in the black and white with ties and thinking about how much it's changed from the Dookie era Green Day. The songs were anthemic and bombastic. It's not just a sing-along, but more of a charge with the music. You were having a blast with Dookie, but you're upset with the world in American Idiot. The reinvention of Green Day paired with a big concept album paid off and carried the popularity of the band into another generation. It wasn't just the lost generation of disheveled 90s alternative fans, it was emo kids also screaming to American Idiot in the mid-2000s. The emotional range, the newfound obsession from radio and television, Green Day was back thanks to them pointing out the problem of being under the new media. When looking at the 2 albums, I wanted to point out a few of the main differences. Not saying any of these differences are bad, but there are a few differences between Dookie and American Idiot, some obvious, some subtle. And it's not just the years between release dates. I mean, that is a big difference for clear reasons because each album appropriately represents the decade released, the alternative boom of the 90s and the emo pop rock explosion of the 2000s. It's hard to deny that. The tone of the 2 albums might be the greatest difference. I already talked about that a little bit when describing each album, with Dookie being much more lighthearted and a mirror of the MTV MTV generation in '94, and American Idiot reflecting the disgruntled state of world affairs going on in 2004. It boils down to a level of maturity. Green Day were still fairly young when Dookie was released. American Idiot came when the group was a decade older and wiser. In the albums, Dookie is often seen as more adolescent and carefree, while American Idiot is considered a more mature album, especially from the political perspective. The other huge difference is the concept of American Idiot. This album being a rock opera and a huge statement of the time when patriotism was a massive attention point. Regardless of how you felt about the war in Iraq, it was rare to hear a band go all in explaining the problems within America. Dookie, on the other hand, wasn't that serious. I joke around, but even at its most relatable and nihilistic, Dookie was still a dumb fun album meant to be just that, while sounding great. It wasn't about one specific message meant to rile up an audience. Dookie was meant to sing along with and blast in your car stereo while hoping the CD didn't skip. Another thing that today's generation won't experience without having CDs. Before I started writing all this out, I put a poll on the community tab for the Rocks page. Screen capped at 6.2 thousand votes at the time I recorded this, and it's Dookie and American Idiot tied right down the middle at 50% each. That's how close the decision is for thousands of people. I'm leaving the poll up and you can still vote on it with a link in the pinned comment, but just looking at the statistics show how this is a decision that it's not as clear as I thought it'd be for a sample size. Thousands of votes in only a few days and it's as close as possible. Here are a few comments viewers left.
Both are classics, but Dookie is one of the best pop punk albums, point blank, period. Can't go wrong with either one. American Idiot's one of the greatest concept albums of all time. The greatest would have to be The Black Parade. I have a special place in my heart for both, but I have more favorites from American Idiot, and I feel like it has more diversity. Dookie easily. Nothing against American Idiot. It's a really awesome album. Don't get me wrong, it's just Dookie is the most classic pop punk rock album of all time, and American Idiot is my top 3 favorite album from them. Dookie is my second, and Insomniac is one of my all-time favorite album from them. Great. Here I thought, cool, Dookie will settle it once and for all. Clicks the obvious answer. 50-50. You've helped no one poll.
As for my personal choice, having both albums for many years and listening to both way too many times, there is a slight, tiny tipping point for one. The way I see it, the best Green Day album is Dookie. American Idiot is a fantastic record and shows off the writing talents of Green Day, but I think Dookie best represents the band in music, style, and just overall the best showcase of songs from Green Day encapsulated in one album. While American Idiot is the rock opera concept that proved Green Day were not going to fade into the background like so many other successful 90s bands, it was Dookie from the 90s that originally proved Green Day wasn't just another massive 90s success story or one album wonder. This is a pop punk album that has not aged 30 years later. Just saying that sounds impossible, but it's true. American Idiot is the perfect timestamp that represented the frustration of the 2000s in America, but Dookie represented an entire dirty, wound-up generation. The songs were all amazing from beginning to end, regardless of context or absurdity, and each single on Dookie sounds distinctly unique, whereas the singles on American Idiot definitely sound like they belong right next to each other. The performances from Billie Joe, Mike, and Tré on Dookie were all flawless. The singles and deep cuts hit heavier in song structure and instrument ability, not just lyrically. While American Idiot and Dookie both have their radio-friendly side, it's Dookie that can be played front to back without feeling repetitive from song to song. Finally, the standout moments don't just include lyric hooks, but it's the bridges, the jam sessions, all jam-packed into short tracks that give so much life to the album. You can hear Green Day holding lightning in a bottle every time you hit play on Dookie, and you also hear the band in their best form with the best amount of songs from Green Day's catalog. This is all just one person's opinion, and as the poll proved, it's a close debate between thousands of votes with hopefully more on the way. Again, please vote on the poll in the pinned comment because I want to see what people chose after this video posts. Also, leave a comment here on which album you think is best and why. Some personal stories from albums like this tip the favor for people. And for the record, I did a video just like this on 2 Slipknot albums, the self-titled versus Iowa. If you are interested in more videos like this, please let me know. Also, hit the like button so YouTube knows that people actually watched and not just bots, because YouTube doesn't like to push videos unless enough constant engagement is shown. YouTube is a needy toddler that needs reassurance.